Thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining us. We are going to keep this to an hour and we're going to get through this. For those of you who may be joining us, my name is Dawn Ramsey and I'm the president this year of the League of Cities and Towns. And this is a meeting of the board of directors. Today is Wednesday, January 5th, 2022. We have a 1 hour meeting scheduled for today, and we're going to jump right into our advocacy, engagement, and outreach update. We're going to turn it over to Cam. We've got quite a bit to discuss in the next hour. So thank you for taking the time to join us.
Do you want to welcome these board?
Yes, we have new members joining us. It is January, first meeting in January, which means we've said goodbye to some of our friends who were serving with us, and we would love to welcome some new members of our board. We have Mayor Brett Hales, who's the new mayor of Murray City, and Mayor Hales will also be our treasurer here for the league. Thank you. We have Mayor Lenhart, Mike Lenhart of Garden City. Thank you for being here. We have Landing Mayor Logan Monson. Welcome in this official capacity. We appreciate you. And from the City Council of Manti, Mary Winch. Thank you so much to all of you, and welcome to the Board of Directors for the Utah League of Cities and Towns. We look forward to meeting with you and to accomplishing good work with you. Thank you all for your willingness to be part of this organization and to represent your regions, your cities, your areas in this great work. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. And the board in December tabled the discussion or the motion on the other two vacancies. So we will address that at the January 19th meeting. We as league staff sent in a memo to Mayor Silvestrini that outlined the procedures of the league vacancy process. So he'll be ready to walk through that on January 19th. The other thing we wanted to ask about before we jump into the two policy issues, we have our local officials day in 2 weeks. As of now, the Capitol has not instituted any sort of new COVID protocols, nor has the Salt Palace. And those are the two facilities that we are using for local officials day. Our registration numbers, Katie, are solid.
Very good.
Yeah, they're perfect. Well,
very good compared to 2020.
Yeah, very, and even better compared to 2021, right?
Even better. Yes.
Yeah, even better.
Yeah.
Excellent. So we just wanted to ask the board quickly if anyone had any recommendations or concerns about local officials day, recognizing that we are going to be gathering several hundred people at the Capitol and at the Salt Palace. So, we're constantly monitoring the COVID protocols, but if there's any thoughts, concerns, recommendations that anybody wants to bring up to us now as we finish planning the event, please let us know. I'm going to take from the, is that somebody want to speak up?
Cameron, I just wanted to say, the federal court yesterday canceled all court really from now until the middle of February. Do you think there's any chance that this might get, I just wanted to make you aware of that. My partner has a jury trial he's been getting ready for months, and it's all canceled. Everything was, they closed the court essentially yesterday.
I was not aware of that, so thank you, Mayor. Katie's been in daily communication with the Capitol and with the Salt Palace. Katie, not to put you on the spot, but
I just sent the diagrams to them today and haven't heard anything, so I can follow up with them then too if there's anything.
perfect. So thank you, Mayor. And again, we're following it every day. So if something happens, we'll notify you as soon as possible, knowing that just in the room right now, I see 3 cities with 3 active youth councils. So we'll make sure we notify you if anything has to change. Any final thoughts related to Local Officials Day?
Yeah, aren't we done with this yet?
I don't know, Mayor Caldwell. I thought that was your job as league president, is that you were going to get this taken care of.
Well, it's not my job anymore, it's Don's, but
Wait. It was supposed to be taken care of.
Cameron, I have a quick question. Are masks required in the Capitol? Because we're bringing up our youth city council the night before, and Senator Ibsen's given them a private tour.
Perfect. At this point, I don't want to be flippant in a public meeting. Masks are not required at the Capitol, and let's put it this way. A month ago, there was no mask to be seen anywhere at the Capitol complex. I was at a meeting on Monday, and I'd say a quarter of the people in the room, myself included, were wearing masks. So there's
How
no,
many at the Great Salt Lake Summit?
Councilor Bradshaw asked how many at the Great Salt Lake Summit. It was probably 10%.
Me and you?
Right,
So what you're saying is there is no mask prohibition.
right.
You're welcome to wear it.
Yeah, right. And so but that there is something that, we've considered whether we should have masks on hand for people to wear. So that's something we'll just keep working through in the next couple of weeks.
Thanks.
Okay, anything else local officials day related? Okay, if anything else arises, just reach out to us, and we're looking forward to that event, whatever it looks like 2 weeks from now, because by then it'll be day 2 of the legislative session. So Mayor Ramsey, if it's okay with you, I'd like to quickly set the stage for the retail incentive discussion. Again, our goal is to be done at 1. We do not have a bill from the Commission on Housing Affordability, and I chatted with the bill sponsor again this morning. The commission will meet on Friday. They're hoping the bill will be ready in time. So our plan today is to take the last 10 minutes of our meeting to just get general direction from the board about the PowerPoint that we sent out as part of the board packet on Monday, as well as share hot off the presses information about missing middle housing inventory around the Wasatch Front, both of which will be important for that meeting on Friday, but because there's not a bill, we can't take a position on it yet. So between now and say 12:45-ish, we will focus on the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission. What we sent out to you yesterday and Monday reflects the latest and greatest in the retail incentive space. On Monday, well, let me back up. So when the league board last met in December, when we promised you lunch and then didn't deliver, the league, you as a board instructed us to create our own draft as a counter proposal to what was coming out of the UEOC. Even if that counter proposal had no political legs, it would at least allow us to articulate these are the key concepts that need to be in a proposal in order for us to not oppose a bill or potentially even support a bill. As a result, league staff over the last few weeks put together what we put in your packet, which was the ULCT draft. And then kudos to Justin Lee and to Carson Eilers, who said we need to try to simplify the text here, make it easier for people to follow and know how this would work in practice. So that's where they built the flow charts. So Carson, kudos to you for putting together flow charts, really at a very last minute effort with the bill or the concept that came out of Monday's meeting to get it to you in advance. So we have the ULCT proposal that is consistent with what the league board identified at the annual convention. Now, several of you were not on the league board at the annual convention. So we would still welcome a motion today to either support that league draft or say if a draft looked like the league draft, the league could be neutral on that. Support or neutral, either one would be fine right now. But again, it would just give us that direct marker of this is what we need in a bill in order to not oppose a bill. The second flow chart is what we have called the Representative Schultz proposal. It is unchanged from what we presented to you in December. It just now has a flow chart. So Nick, will you go ahead and share the screen with the flow charts so people can see what I'm referencing? Both of those were in the packet that we sent you on Monday. So Nick, just scan down.
First flow chart.
So there's the ULCT proposal that I just referenced. Now scan down to the second one. And this is the Representative Schultz proposal. And then what we sent to you yesterday, which we acknowledge was short notice, but that's because things kind of changed during our subgroup meeting on Monday, is what we're calling the Senator Vickers concept. Now, the Senator Vickers concept is not yet in bill form by Legislative Research and General Counsel. Okay, we walked into the meeting Monday afternoon, which they scheduled actually Friday morning. So New Year's Eve, we got the calendar notice. And it was a good thing that my flight back from Pasadena was Sunday rather than Monday so that I could be there. But Senator, so we walked in ready to talk about the Schultz proposal and our counter proposal. And then about a third of the way through the meeting, Senator Vickers said, well, I've got this other idea. What if we do this? And we talked about it for a few minutes, and then Senator Vickers had to run to another meeting. Representative Schultz and Ben Hart from the governor's office, who met with the board here a couple months ago, then took the first crack at drafting a bill that reflected the Vickers concept, and it really merged the Schultz concept, the Schultz bill with the Vickers concept, but there's still not a ledge research bill. As a result, we're referring to it simply as the Vickers concept. And that's what our team outlined and put together the flow chart yesterday and emailed out yesterday. So what you have before you today is you have the lead draft, the Schultz draft, and the Vickers concept. And we need a motion by the end of the meeting that gives us direction, particularly Mayor Ramsey, when she has to go before the entire UEOC next week with the governor, the speaker, and the president, to say, we can support these things, we are opposed to these things, we want to continue working on these things. So I will jump into the details here in just a moment. Let me pause here to see if there are any questions about either the process of the last few days or the flow charts that you have in front of you.
This is Julie Fulmer. I have a.
Fulmer.
Is this a good time to incorporate some things that I think might be missing from the flow charts?
Let me do that when we get to the compare and contrast of the three.
Okay.
Any other questions on policy or on the process or what we need to accomplish in the next half an hour? Okay. In that case, Nick, will you scan up to the first page here? And this is what we sent out last night. So again, thank you to Justin, Carson, and Molly and Liam, who were putting this together while I was running to as many oaths of office as possible. This articulates what is in each of these three proposals and really where the biggest sticking points still lie. I also want to acknowledge that the RDA Association has some representatives on the call right now. They are actually meeting to have this same discussion at 12:30. So RDA reps, if there's anything that you want to say, Mayor Ramsey, if that's okay with you, welcome your comments before you leave for your meeting where you're reviewing the same materials with the RDA directors and economic development directors. So RDA folks, anything any of you want to say before I jump into the comparison doc?
Is that Ashley?
Well,
She's the only one who's a panelist. The rest are members of the
oh,
board.
so yeah, Nick or Danny Waltz. So just watch if any of them and as members of the public want to speak, just let us know. All right, so Nick is managing that piece. Okay, so now that the comparison document that you have for the three flow charts, really the biggest distinctions are these. With the lead piece, we are still using the same definition of regional retail that exists in current law. So current law says that Cameron City cannot do a sales tax incentive to induce a regional retail facility, which is defined as a big box of 80,000 square feet, a grocer of 30,000 square feet, or a vehicle dealer, that you cannot use a sales tax incentive to induce that business to come to your community. But the exception to that is for public infrastructure, which is undefined. So we use that same definition and said no tax incentive payments, so sales or property tax, to regional retail unless you meet a higher threshold. And that higher threshold would include that you have housing attached, system improvements for infrastructure, redevelopment, or lower income areas or rural areas. And then, like I said, we did not change the definition of big box. And we also don't have a penalty in our proposal. Senator Vickers' concept actually builds off of our framework. Okay, and we've spent time with Senator Vickers. He's a former city council member. He also by day owns a retail shop on Main Street Park, Cedar City, which is in a historic area. And he's familiar with redevelopment challenges and other things. So his concept was to simply redefine regional retail to a much smaller size and say no incentive to that smaller size unless there was housing attached to it. And then, like I said, he presented the concept and then he had to leave the meeting for another meeting. Yeah, but we followed up with him Tuesday morning and he acknowledged that he hadn't put a lot of meat on the bones for what he wanted to accomplish necessarily. So we built the flow chart based on the dialogue that came with Representative Schultz and the governor's office after the meeting. And they said, well, if we're going to reduce big box, it should be down to 15,000 square feet, which would be the equivalent of like a CVS drugstore. That's your ballpark, 15,000 square feet, as opposed to the current law of 80,000. And then they still wanted to have the penalty language in there. And then you can see the Representative Schultz proposal. We've discussed that one ad nauseum. So Mayor Ramsey, I want feedback from, and you need feedback from this group about the ULCT proposal, the Senator Vickers concept, and the Schultz proposal, and then we'll look for a motion in about 20 minutes. I see I've got Gary's hand up, and then Mayor Fulmer had, so we'll probably start with Mayor Fulmer and then go to Gary.
Okay, thank you. I know I saw that you added the mitigate development impediments for the redevelopment agencies. I didn't know if the areas that were added, like the 17C-2 or 1-102 section 20 was enough to cover all of the things that I know my RDA had. What if we added just that it grandfathered in RDAs that were currently there according to their current phases, or just kind of bolster the mitigate development impediments sections? And then I noticed that on the, let's see, this might be, let's see. I just want to make sure that the rebate, refund, subsidy, impact fee, waive, and similar award offsets is also attributed to the RDAs that are currently in play. For instance, we've put in a lot of housing and programmed a lot of things into our redevelopment area, but in certain parts of our area, we can't kind of change anything in the ground, but we have to kind of encourage people to come and rejuvenate the area. Also, we can't put housing into the area. And that was going to be another question for me. When we say 70% AMI, how are we defining AMI and how are we tracking that? Would it be better to put missing middle or connected housing?
Perfect. So several questions there. Mayor Fulmer, I'll see if I should have been writing them down. So I'll see if I can just hit them all. And if I missed one, restate it. First, on the development impediments piece, on our proposal, we're trying to keep things consistent with current law. So we actually didn't redefine development impediments. So if your redevelopment agency is following the law about development impediments, our proposal wouldn't modify that. The Schultz proposal doesn't use the term development impediments. So it does essentially redefine those for these purposes, and it's redefined as redevelopment of existing facility or environmental mitigation, both of which are development impediments. But Representative Schultz is concerned that development impediments in current law is a tool that cities use to essentially create impediments that may not actually exist. And the governor's office shares some of that concern. So that we were trying to just keep it consistent with current law. So if your RDA should be fine.
Okay,
The second piece on
my question for you is that you put 17C-1-102 and then you put in little parentheses 20. Maybe I just don't understand.
Yeah,
like,
so that's just the reference to the existing definition of development impediments.
okay, because underneath it, I went and read, and it was like 21 was a different kind of impediment, just not the urban renewal or the community redevelopment betterments. And so as long as it's covered in there, that's totally fine for me. And I would say to Representative Schultz, there are some communities that might be true in, but A lot of us that are already cleaning up brownfield sites and going through this have already done most of that cleanup or have kind of put a lot of those structures in place. And in order to be successful as a community as a whole, not in comparison with other communities, we would need something like mitigating development impediments there.
Right. Well, so let me add to your second piece on the date. Representative Schultz in his proposal had a delayed effective date so that essentially everything up to that date would be grandfathered under a current law. So we didn't have a date in ours, but it would be the same concept that this would only apply to prospective agreements, not
That's
existing agreements. Then your third question was about the AMI piece. And this is something that Mayor Caldwell raised at the December meeting that we incorporated into the league proposal. The question of whether you should look at AMI at the census block level versus the census tract level. Yet at the meeting on Monday, we had this discussion too, and the governor's office was going to put together essentially a map of what this would look like. And there was a lot of back and forth over whether or not this type of provision should even exist. So you'll notice that right now, the Senator Vickers concept was simply to cut it off at a square footage level and not have any other standards. But Senator Vickers did acknowledge to us that he wanted to talk about other standards, but he just hadn't had time to really flesh those out yet. So I think,
Yeah,
did I hit everything?
Yeah, because if we did 70% AMI and it was actually capturing the AMI, despite the fact that Vineyard has so much missing middle and so much connected housing, it's so unaffordable that we wouldn't meet the AMI, but we are providing the availability that they're looking for. We are providing the type of housing, but these types of large percentages would require us to deed restrict crazy amounts of our property, and it just wouldn't make sense. So I'm glad that you're looking into that. And just a clarification, when you talked about prospective, you mean prospective agreements for RDAs, because RDAs in a recent bill had the ability to extend their dates because of the way that they trigger and make these types of agreements. You're not talking about prospective agreements within a current RDA, you're talking about prospective RDAs, right?
So that is what I am contemplating, that if you renew a development agreement or an RDA or a CRA, that renewal would still operate under the old law. That may not be what Representative Schultz is contemplating. So I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that is a very good nuance.
Okay, and I would really push hard on that because it would devastate a lot of areas, and it definitely would devastate 75% of my city, which is a significant portion of a community.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Mayor Fulmer. Nick, can you switch over to that housing missing middle, go to page 11. I'm going to steal some of our thunder from later, but because Mayor Fulmer brought it up, Vineyard, this is a big deal. So page 11, yeah, for those of you who can see that, you'll see right at the top, Vineyard City actually does have, per the Utah Foundation research that we commissioned, does have the most missing middle housing unit types in Utah County by city. So we'll come back to this at the end, but because Mayor Fulmer, you brought it up, I thought it was appropriate to reference that. So let's go to Gary, and then there's a hand here, and then Mayor Kafusi turned her camera on, it looked like. So Nick, you can go back to the comparison.
You want the comparison up?
Yeah. So Gary.
Does the Vickers proposal prohibit a city from putting in infrastructure?
So his concepts, as of now, yes, but that's where I think Senator Vickers, per his own acknowledgement, hasn't thought through all the sidebars that are necessary. So if you as a board say, the league could get behind the league proposal, which includes that infrastructure piece, in other words, we could negotiate in the Senator Vickers space of redefining regional retail in the code, so long as there's still the opportunity for the partnership on infrastructure. I think Senator Vickers would be open to that.
I mean, I see a couple of advantages of, obviously, if we have a proponent in the Senate, that's really important. And I see a couple of things I like. I like the more simplified version that he's looking at, but if we can massage the square footage size on some of those areas about what they define as big box retail, and particularly if we can include a couple of things, but especially the ability to put in system improvements. So sidewalks, storm drain, whatever that helps pay down the cost of development. I think that's critical.
Yeah, perfect.
So my question is following similar lines. Did Senator Vickers tell you where he was pulling his data from on his big box numbers, since they're not necessarily coming from other defined places?
Sure.
Because the grocery store at less than 1,500 square feet, there's not going to be many grocery stores that fit that. But Immigration Harmons is the only.
And the Daybreak one is
No,
17.
actually, that one's going to be bigger, and then the Holiday Harvest would be bigger. So the Immigration one would be the only one that we can think of that's actually sub 15. So.
So
I was
Senator-
curious if he said where he got these, or if he just kind of pulled these out, or if he had room to think about realistic examples of sizes.
Senator Vickers said in the meeting that he had met with the Economic Development Director of Cedar City to talk about a potential number. And that's where the 25,000 number came from. So Senator Vickers in the meeting said, yeah, what about 25,000? And then the draft that circulated Monday night was down to 15. So I don't want to put words in his mouth of what specific examples he had in mind or where the 25 came from. Certainly 80 to 25 is a big drop, and then the 30 to 25 is a minor drop, but then dropping to 15, you're right, would cut out a lot of the neighborhood markets that are starting to pop up.
I think those are an important part for food desert considerations in walkable communities.
I think so too, especially if the difference is 2,000, 3,000 square feet, right?
So that's what I was curious, if he gave you
I
a
hope
sense
he's
of
open to
where he came up with them, or how he got there, and if you thought there was education or flex in that.
He said he had met with Cedar City, and it wasn't that it was Cedar City's official position. We just lost our Cedar City board member, and I've not had a chance to follow up with Danny, their economic development director, but it came out of a brainstorm session with their economic development director. Jason Birmingham, are you on the call?
Yes.
I am.
Can I put you on the spot since I know you've chatted?
I'd be happy to address the question. I think it's a great question that's asked. I did spend quite a bit of time with Danny Stewart, and as you had indicated, Danny, Senator Vickers did reach out to Danny and was looking for in his description, a compromise, a position that would allow for the idea of, reducing or eliminating certain retail incentives, but recognizing that it is a tool and an important one for smart growth and planning and everything. So he and Danny Stewart did talk about it. Danny had indicated that one size really doesn't fit all. He actually expressed that to Senator Vickers, that, he could see where maybe 25,000 square feet might be a good threshold, given a couple of projects that Cedar City specifically had by their interchange. But once I kind of talked to him, he admitted that they really hadn't given a lot of thought to it. But he did actually express more concern with reducing it down. I mentioned to him that it might even get reduced down to 15,000 square feet. And he said, well, we'd have major concerns over that, because 2 or 3 of the projects that we are currently working on, which includes mixed use and retail, would certainly be unattainable under the 15,000 square foot level. So I think the feedback we got was, the simplification, like Gary Hill mentioned, was a good thought, appreciated and hopeful. But if it's restricted down to the parameters that it appears in this proposal, it would go way too far and probably be less appealing than even what Representative Schultz currently has on the table in terms of a proposal. So I guess the long story is, based on Danny's perspective, even from Cedar City, I think the simplification was appreciated and maybe a good place to start, but the size of the square footage and how that would be measured is still problematic in his mind, and he was actually going to circle back with Senator Vickers on that.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason, for following up there. Mary, looks like you have a hand in Manti and St. George.
Yes, yes. Councilwoman Winch, let's go to you first, and then Mayor Randall.
Thank you. Just sort of an overall comment from some of us in rural areas, and I noticed this on the flow chart from the ULCT flow chart. Is there I think it meant, are there reasonable expectations that the payment will cause a significant negative financial impact to another municipality? And I think that's one of the things just overall that we're concerned about, that there could be this unhealthy competition. And those of us that are in smaller communities that don't have a lot of extra dollars to try and use as incentives to pull in businesses, it can be really a detrimental situation. And I would just like that to be considered. The whole incentive thing, I understand how it can be a tool, having lived in big cities and needing certain things to happen, but it can also really be a problem. And I've seen that, where there is this unhealthy competition that goes on, and then the cities, the communities that have the dollars to spend are pulling away more from the surrounding communities. And if we had some language like, is there a reasonable expectation that there's a significant negative, what is significant negative impact, and who makes that determination? I just see potential for some real fallout here, and that's what I wanted to bring to your attention. Thank you.
Can I address that,
Yes,
Mayor?
please, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, council member. And I'm glad you raised that point for a couple of reasons. We did a couple of things in our draft that are different than what appears in either the Schultz or the Vickers proposal. The first thing we did was to try to increase the standard for when a city can provide a retail incentive. So in other words, you have to meet certain criteria, such as it's a mixed-use development and housing. So we went into current law that actually is the result of litigation from the city of Orem. Roger, how many years ago now? A while. 2000, okay. And that section of code originated from a lawsuit because a city had provided an incentive to a developer, and someone sued over it. And so the Supreme Court said there has to be a standard a city meets before you can provide an incentive. So we went to that section and essentially suggested increasing that standard to where Cameron City cannot offer an incentive simply to improve the tax base in Cameron City. It has to meet another broader objective. And then, Councilmember, to your point, the second piece we added to that, which I'm glad you highlighted, is that you also would have to show that Cameron City, in offering the incentive, is simply not trying to attract the business from Don City next door. And we were trying to distinguish between out-of-state corporation who's looking to come to Utah and doesn't have a presence yet versus in-state store that's currently in Don City, and Cameron City brings a wheelbarrow of money to in-state corporation and says, come from Don City to Cameron City. Clearly that would have a negative impact on Don City, and that's the unhealthy competition piece. So we were trying to address that with the language we proposed. So in many ways, what our language is still putting handcuffs and guardrails around how cities engage in this space, but would still allow for engagement in this space for these broader public policy outcomes. Mayor, you got Mayor Randall
Yes,
and
Mayor Randall next, and then Terry Malkovich next, after that.
I need to unmute. So I'm just kind of piggybacking on what Councilwoman Winch had said. That was one of my concerns also is even the big cities share that concern of a rural city that St. George has never offered incentives for retail before. And we've had our legislators express heavily that they don't want fighting from one city to another, or we're going to try and get this big box store from you because we're going to offer the incentives. So we do want to see some type of language that helps prevent the fighting within the cities. So Cameron City doesn't steal from Don City.
Thank you. Thank you. Carrie, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, Councilmember Malkovich.
Can you hear me and see me okay?
Yes.
I just wanted to bring up one of the concerns that I've had for the last two meetings, and that is for smaller communities, fifth and sixth class cities, especially who live in first class counties, because as it was discussed earlier, that a lot of these are based on county size, and now we're in the same boat as Provo Orem or whoever, and we wanted to just make sure that is that still a discussion option or an item that's still on the table to discuss on how smaller cities might not be. We don't want to be swallowed up just because our county is large.
yeah, so Mayor Ramsey, I can address
Yes,
that.
please.
So this came up in the Monday meeting as well, council member. So in our proposal, as you see, we were still focused on the county size. And that was in part because the Representative Schultz proposal had been focused on county size. To your point, there are a handful of cities, and I'll use Hilldale and Washington County. Washington County is, Hilldale is a good example. So Washington County is a second-class county. So per state law, it's an urban county. But Hilldale is not exactly urban, right? So the issue of whether or not Hilldale should be played by the same rules as St. George is a real question. So this came up on Monday, and we floated the idea of using the SB 34 thresholds around retail incentives rather than county classification. As a reminder, with SB 34, cities above 10,000 statewide and 5,000 in urban areas have additional standards that they have to meet when it comes to planning for housing that smaller communities do not. So we discussed, does it make sense to have this type of framework follow the SB 34 model rather than a county classification model? Representative Schultz asked us to bring him back a list later this week of which communities in counties of the first, second, third, and fourth class would, under his proposal, be affected, but would not be affected under an SB 34 proposal. So the answer is yes, that topic is still under consideration.
Thank you. Be sure to include Woodland Hills on your list.
Can you just move it to city instead of county?
Sure, right. And I think when you make your motion in a few minutes, that could be part of the direction too, is to say for your, distinction between urban and rural, rather than having to focus on county size, continue exploring potential distinctions based on city size. Where that does get tricky, and this was Representative Schultz's pushback on Monday, and I think it's fair actually, is you have a lot of cities that are not SB 34 cities yet, but are shoulder cities in the rapidly growing suburban areas. And so part of the objective here is to get away from unfair competitive advantages. And so he raised the concern, what happens if you have, and in fact, Councilmember Malkovich, I'll use South Utah County as the example. If you say Spanish Fork and Salem, or Spanish Fork, you have to play by this set of rules because you're an SB 34 city, but Goshen, you don't, even though you're just a couple of freeway off-ramps away from each other. Does that inadvertently create competition to push retail to Goshen and out of Spanish Fork because Goshen can offer an incentive. Now Goshen doesn't have much of a tax base. It's not, so I think there's some practicalities there, but that was his pushback about the urban fringe areas.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else have any thoughts on this discussion between these three options?
Mayor,
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm not sure who that is. Please let me know who you are.
Go ahead and raise your hand. If you click the raise your hand, it'll shoot you straight to the top and we can see a pretty.
Mayor, it's Mayor Walker.
Before we go to Mayor Walker, I'm going to ask Nick to switch over to the draft motion that league staff has put together so that people can be digesting that and tweaking. You could tweak that in your mind here as Mayor Walker speaks and if there's anybody else. So thank you, Mayor.
Okay, yeah. So after Mayor Walker, we'll come back over here to Kate. All right, Mayor Walker.
I didn't want to tweak anybody's mind, but if so be it. No, I just wanted to kind of second what Mayor Fulmer said. One of my concerns is the AMI issue, right? Because you look at my city, I think you look at most of us, I don't know that the 40% that we talked about before I don't think it's doable in a lot of these communities. I think we should get away from, as long as we're getting away from that is an area of concern I have as well. And then I also like the concept of removing the word new from what Vickers is saying about, there are cities that are already doing this. I don't think they should get penalized for what they're already doing. I guess in that regard, that's the only other thing I want to make sure we take into account. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Kate.
The other question I had for you, Cameron, is on the penalties for violation.
Yes.
Obviously I like the league's blank box on no specific penalty or violation a lot better than the other two, but Vickers penalty box seems a lot more workable than the Schultz penalty box. Did he indicate anything to you there on additional flexibility or considerations you would make there, or was he locked in on the penalties for violations?
Thank you for asking that question too, because that was the other key policy piece that we had put in a potential motion. So the penalty provision has morphed considerably. A few months ago, the penalty provision was basically if a city is found in violation of this statute, you forfeit your ability to do CRS. Now it's a cause of action that is still overly broad because you could read it to say that anybody has standing to bring an action against a city for violating it. But really what their intent is, and I take them at their word on this, what their intent is they feel like if they don't have some sort of remedy that a city could just ignore this, enter into contracts for incentives and go along their merry way because there's not the potential concern out there. Now, whether we agree with that or not is a different question, but that's where they're coming from. And it's been interesting talking to cities over the last few months on this issue with the current prohibition that's in state law and how cities have complied with that prohibition while still offering incentives. And that's what they're trying to tighten. So we did not proactively offer a penalty in part because of the potential precedent of and the state passes a law and then attaches a penalty. And I can think of some of our friends in the home building industry that would love to have penalties attached to different things. But if the board is open to the remedy, if it was a tight enough remedy, I mean, the whole reason 10A2 exists is because there was a court case where a property owner sued a city feeling like the city had unfairly given an incentive to somebody else and the court agreed. Roger, you and I were exchanging emails about this late last night. Is there anything you want to add?
Well, I think there's a big difference if you're expanding standing. In other words, who can bring a cause of action? And you move into sort of the world of vigilanteism, that's a bigger issue. I mean, if the issue is you've got to be damaged to bring a lawsuit, then that's basically, you can do that now. If the issue is we're limiting standing, all we're doing is providing different remedies, big deal. But if we're basically talking about who can bring causes of action, I guess that's it becomes more problematic to me in that regard, because I don't know why we're making it a more, everybody can sue under this, but we got a lot of other obligations that cities have to do and the state has to do. And the basic premise is you got to be damaged to bring a lawsuit. The issue is one of control. I mean, we have obligations to submit auditable records and other things that we have to do. And you don't, the remedy there is you don't get a certified tax rate, or you don't get, you can't levy taxes. That's also very heavy and extreme. But I just want to point out the caution, the biggest concern I have is, is the goal to expand who can sue, or is the goal to specify remedies for failure to act?
And I guess how did Vickers indicate, or did he leave too soon on what kind of a spectrum he's
He was
considering?
silent on the penalty. So the penalty piece came up after he left.
Okay.
So that really just got copied and pasted from the current Schultz proposal.
We have a couple board members with chat comments as well. I can pull up.
Okay, before you do that, Nick, we've shared the screen. Hopefully those of you in the room can see it too. Really what we've prepared is a three-part motion, because there's the league draft, there's the Schultz draft, and there's the Vickers concept. And we've tried to work direction to Mayor Ramsey into it as well, so that when she's testifying next week, she can explain our position while still giving staff direction on how to continue negotiating in this space. So so Nick, can you scan it down enough? Yeah, so people can just see section 2. No, go back up so you can see right there. So ULC 1B, but be able to see 1, 2, 3, 4, and the next piece. Yeah, right, a little bit lower. So that whole part 2, right? So the whole part 2 is there. So people can look at part 2, and then we'll look at part 3. Part 1 was simple. It was whether you support the ULCT draft proposal, or we would not oppose a proposal that mirrors the ULCT proposal. Okay, so let's do the chat room, and then I've got a hand from Mayor Walker. So the chat, we'll have to walk closer to the screen to see it. Sorry.
I can read them off.
No,
for
it's
you.
fine. I can just see it. Okay, so yeah, the Councilmember Egbert on the city level. Now, maybe here's what's tricky though about Mapleton. Mapleton does comply with has to comply with SB 34. So the city level is not about the AMI piece, it's about population. So Mapleton would still be in the same category if we followed the SB 34 model. And then Mayor Randall, include language to prevent incentives to relocate from one city to another. So that's what our proposal does include. It's not a full prohibition, but it basically says if there's that significant disruption to Dawn City, then Cameron City can't offer the incentive.
We also had some comments earlier from non-board members. I don't know if you want to.
Okay, let me, okay, yeah, go back up to the top. Okay, oh yeah, so Dave Davis, thank you for joining us. Dave is the president of the Food Industry Association and the Retail Association. I invited him to listen into the conversation today. So thank you for joining us and for adding your expertise. 25,000 would exclude most grocers, okay? And then go down.
Yeah, because I have a question about his second
The
comment.
grocery Gwen did will have 18,000 sales floor. The total, yeah, that actually gets to the distinction that Councilor Bradshaw brought up a couple of months ago in the definition of big box of what the space is being used for. And that's something that I think the Vickers model would allow us some flexibility to be tighter with definitions there.
Okay, Mayor Walker.
Oh, you're muted, Mayor Walker.
I said, I agree with what Roger said. I'm opposed to any penalty language. I think the law is clear. If you think you have a cause of action, if they pass this bill, they can bring their cause of action. I don't want to create any new standing for anybody. Look, I'm a plaintiff's lawyer, so it's good for me, but I'm going to tell you, all of us cities, we can't suffer the kind of lawsuits that'll come on nitpicky little things. If someone has a cause of action because the city isn't complying with this, then let them bring their case, but don't create any specific, the minute we have a specific remedy or specific, a party that can have standing, you're going to have someone stand in. I mean, it's the way we work. I don't think we need, there's no reason in my mind for us to have a specific penalty on this on something like this. If they've been damaged, like Roger said, they can make their case, but don't give anyone an opportunity to make their case they can't right now. That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, it'll cost all of you a lot of money. I'm just telling you. It's easy to bring a lawsuit and make you settle with this. So that's all I want to say on that.
Thank you, Mayor. Gary Hill.
I just want to echo what Mayor Walker said. Totally agree with that. And then the second thought is, what if we somehow tie retail incentives to HB 34 standards? That you have, if you meet some high number of the standards on that list, that would allow you to use retail incentives. Cameron, has that been discussed at all?
Talked about that.
So I have a question for Gary. Gary, what number do you think that you'd say was that high number? If you pick 7?
I mean, there's a lot on that list, so I don't know, and there might be more in the future. But I don't have a great idea on the number. Right now, what's required? 4, Cam?
3 or 4, depending on if you have transit. And actually,
so maybe
Gary, go ahead.
I was just going to say, maybe it's double what's required for what's required currently.
So can I jump on this? Because Mayor Walker, Mayor Fulmer, and I had a conversation right before Christmas that was similar, where we were talking about adjustments to SB 34 and just this whole concept of SB 34 plus that we put on the table of, if you are, well, Cameron City is the bad example. So if you are, let's pick a good city. If you are Clearfield City, hey, you're welcome.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah. But if you are Mark City,
On the demographics.
if you're Mark City and you're going above and beyond, that you should have more tools available to you or more access to state resources than if you're Cameron City and you're not. That's really the underlying principle of SB 34 plus. I actually think, based on what Representative Schultz said to Mayors Walker and Fulmer, that there may be some appetite with him to pursue that. And what that looks like, we can, we could brainstorm through it, because what he keeps saying is he wants to limit incentives, but if a city's doing their part on housing and housing is part of this, he's fine with them using retail incentives. So Gary, again, we could modify these draft motions to direct staff to, look at merging SB 34 plus with this concept to see if there is a way to accomplish that.
Do you think Vickers?
One thing oh, sorry.
Sorry, I had 2 questions. So let's go, if it's okay, Mayor, Gary, follow up and then to Councilmember Bradshaw.
Mine's a comment, but one thing that addresses is it keeps us it helps the cities that have already put in a huge amount of housing, and it keeps us from tying the development to a specific site, and it looks more at the community as a whole, which I think is really advisable if we can do that. So just a comment.
It's a good comment. Okay.
My comment or question is, because I am very appreciative that Senator Vickers has taken a slightly more thoughtful approach, and therefore might continue to move down a path of thoughtfulness. What is your sense from the last meeting about merging in HB 34 plus with the Vickers model? Did he indicate interest or flexibility there?
Justin, can I put you on the spot for that? Because you had the follow-up meeting with Senator Vickers on Tuesday.
Yeah, I think my take is Senator Vickers threw out a concept at the meeting on Monday, and from my conversation with him, I think he's very open to almost any discussion. There wasn't a lot he was locked into at that point. So I think Senator Vickers is open to discussion. The floor plan size, the square footage, the penalties, he was thinking much broader. He wasn't really into the weeds yet. So I think there's room there to have additional conversations and get into the weeds with him.
It just makes much more sense to expand. I mean, to go down an HB 34 plus in those cities. And you bring up, and I'll use Clearfield as an example because
yeah, that's right.
Because Cameron brought it up. in the last, in the last 5 years and going up through the next 3, so in an 8-year period, we will add 5,000 housing units. This is 5,000 density units to a city of what was at that point 30,000. That is an absolutely enormous amount. And so then to say, the reason you've done this is to eventually bring these other components, the commercial, the retail, and then to say, well, sorry, now you can't incentivize that to come in when you've already done your part is a really strong thing to say to a city that has led an entire county, if not an entire region, without being asked or without any incentive to do it. This was our vision of what we wanted to do and how we needed to do it. So then to yank out the cords and say, well, sorry, there's no way. Instead to say, yes, those cities who have done this, and we're not unique, we're not alone, but those who have done their part and are already there, yeah, the tools need to be there. And that I think falls in line with what the representative is trying to accomplish.
I think you're right.
So Mayor, can I, Nick, I know we've got the motion up there. I also recognize it's 1 o'clock and I wanted to take a moment on the missing middle housing piece because it gets to what Mayor Shepherd and others have been
Would you
saying.
like to try to massage a motion and see what the.
So Justin
feeling
is massaging the motion as we speak. I see we've got hands up from Mayor Silvestrini, Mayor Walker, and Jason Birmingham.
I don't see
I
Mayor
just-
Silvestrini at all.
He just put his hand down.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I can be brief. I just agree with what Mayor Shepherd said and what Gary said. And it's kind of what we talked about last time. Let's give the incentives a chance before we bring out the sticks. And, tying this whole concept to, performance, where if cities have already, met goals under SB 34, this is a way to encourage everybody to do that. That's what we want to do here. And trying to, punish us, open us up to liability, have unintended consequences of loss of revenue to defend lawsuits. That's really not going to accomplish the goal. And what's going to accomplish the goal is incentives, not sticks.
Thank you. Jason.
Yeah, mine is a very brief comment, but it's relative to the maybe tactic or strategy. I think it's been well covered, but I would add, based on the work that I've done with Senator Vickers over many years, and also his background with local government, I think he is amenable, and I think he might be the best ally in this discussion relative to how the overall committee reacts to what's proposed and moves forward. I wonder if the right approach is to, to come out in a motion of, we like where Vickers is going, at least in terms of simplification, in terms of recognizing that it's not one size fits all, and then take the league proposal so that it doesn't look like it's coming from the league. It's not the league proposal versus another proposal. We work in some of our components that are really critical to us, but it really becomes the Vickers proposal. And I think Senator Vickers is very open and willing to be the champion to kind of bridge the gap. And I think he's an ally. I think he's open to the idea of square footage. I think he's open to the idea of, not adding additional penalties and making it more punitive and providing more standing to others. So that's just my observation, is I think he is kind of set himself up now to be a good advocate and maybe helpful for us. And I think we ought to maybe consider working with him and taking his kind of global thought process and then narrowing it down a little bit and adding some of what we know we need to accomplish. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
Thank you. I agree with what Jason just said. I do agree. And I absolutely agree with what you just said. Mayor Walker, and then.
I got one last thing, and I want you guys all to keep this example in your minds. At my front runner site in Draper, where front runner stops, we zoned that 110 acres, unlimited height and unlimited density. Unlimited. Now, if you go over there today, you will see a bunch of 5-story buildings, but you will mostly see a brand new residential building that could have been 100 stories, frankly, without any special considerations. It is 4 stories. So in my unlimited zone, like Mayor Shepherd said, where we put, we opened it up and said, come here and do it. They didn't. Now they're out the other side of their mouth going and trying to pass this legislation, telling us we need to do all this stuff because the cities aren't cooperating. And all I'm saying is SB 34 plus has got to be in there because there are cities that have cooperated and we should not, and that example you guys need to keep in your mind. Because I'm telling you, it aggravates me to no end, and you could probably hear it in my voice. And I have no problem if they can't make money with the 10-story building, but don't come out and tell all the rest of us, all you other cities, hey, we got to build another 4-story, apartment complex right here where you don't want it and you guys aren't helping us. Because we offered it to them and they built 4 stories. So I don't think we need to let them off the hook on that. It's important because it's a true example of how it really works. So don't think just because we're making a deal that they're going to just, they're going to stop with this. I think we need to make sure Senator Vickers knows about that example because it's important and it needs to be part of how we go moving forward. Jeff's right. Incentives and things like that are got to be part of it because a lot of us have done it and we are doing it. I know all of you have it, but I mean, you can't argue with an unlimited building height zone and then you go build 4 stories and then you go to the neighboring city, Riverton, and say, hey, I got to build this apartment complex by all these people that don't want it. But and Riverton, you're bad because you won't let me do it. That's what irritates me. So anyway.
Yeah, we were that same thing, Troy. Ours is an unlimited height. We have no limitation, and we have yet to have anybody go over 5 stories.
And if I could go back in time, and we talked about this, Mayor, I would have put a minimum height on them, but I wasn't smart enough. So I thought, everybody wants to go big. Yeah, not so much. But that's what I do now. Maybe we should say minimum heights. I'm good with that, but I don't want them to get away with it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Thank you. Provo. Paxman.
Looks like he had lowered his hand. Isaac, did you have something to say?
Well, thank you. This is really, and I don't have a vote here, and this is just me, but we've had discussions about incentives before. I'm feeling this sense of pause of, wow, are we really ready to have, the good guys and the bad guys, and the good guys get to do everything you want, and you have 2 neighboring cities where one guy gets to incentivize Costco and everybody else, the other doesn't. It just strikes me that this, more than anything we've talked about in the league in the time I've been involved with this, really sets a platform that they can start saying, hey, if you don't ban plastic bags in your city, you don't get this or that. And just a little bit of pause. I'm feeling that, wow, this is a new threshold of you can have all this state money and incentives if you play by our rules, and if not, we don't. So that was the little angst I was feeling. Say it for what it's worth. This might be the best way to go. But that was just a little hesitation moment of, wow, this could really create a new landscape for us if we get really into this carrots thing, which I know carrots are better than sticks, but are we ready to go where this might lead us? That's all.
Can I address
Thank you,
that?
Isaac. Yeah.
Isaac, thank you for bringing up that point because in a way you just articulated the civil war that is occurring in California within their municipal league. And in that case, it's over housing and battle between cities on housing and land use policy. And I've talked to my counterpart there on several occasions, trying to make sure we don't follow the exact same path that California is doing. One key component of SB 34 plus is recognizing the incomplete nature of data that exists around housing and land use policies. So part of what we are trying to address in SB 34 plus is better underlying data that everyone can agree is accurate and fair. So I showed briefly that missing middle data that Utah Foundation aggregated, and it's good. And we helped pay for that report, but it also left open a whole bunch of other unanswered questions around affordability and other things. And you have to get that underlying data correct before you can articulate really, what city should qualify and what city shouldn't. Within the SB 34 plus model, we had already gone down the path of saying, if you pick more menu items and are implementing them, then the state should reward you for doing that. because that's totally within your wheelhouse as a city to select the menu items and those strategies. And we have some cities who selected a double-digit number of them, but the state, for purposes of state dollars, treats that city the same way it treats Cameron City that may have only selected 3. So, you know, the feedback we got during caucuses at the convention was that people were comfortable having the state prioritize state dollars to reward communities that were going above and beyond, so long as we have a clear understanding of what it means to go above and beyond, and it's still something that's within your city's control. The Draper example is a good one. Not only do I picture it in my mind, Mayor Walker, but I have the picture saved on my phone because you sent it to me. But yeah, you're welcome. But that's an excellent example of where Draper City should not be quote unquote punished for outcomes that are outside of their control when they have planned for an area that should be able to meet missing middle and affordability goals, but the market didn't respond. So whatever report comes out of SB 34 plus needs to take that nuance into consideration. And that's something we're still waiting on with the official language from what we submitted based on feedback from cities. So Isaac, I'm glad you brought that up because that is a huge point. And I think for purposes of today's motion, we can say, let's look at how to incorporate SB 34 plus into retail incentives without necessarily saying that has to be the outcome, since we still have some of those other gaps we need to fill.
Okay, speaking of a motion, we need to come up with a motion. We need to bring this together, and it might be a combination of 1, 2, and 3, you know, bringing it all together.
My recommendation, Mayor, would be just to do 3 motions. So that way it's easy for people to track and follow. Motion 1 about the league proposal.
Motion 1 is not on the screen.
Yeah, so
Motion
Nick,
1
we'll
would
go
be
back up
about
to the
it.
top. So we put the word support. That's still, based on today's discussion, that still may be too strong of a word. But maybe we'd say, you know, we urge the concepts. Yeah, Justin, you and I are editing on the fly here. But you could say, like, we are supportive of the concepts within the ULCT proposal, including looking at potentially integrating SB 34 plus with retail incentives. That way it gives us that direction, and we can work that into your explanation at the UEOC meeting next week. So that could be motion 1, then motion 2 will be on the Schultz proposal, and motion 3 will be on the Vickers proposal.
We've got a long chat from Jason that came through. I don't know if that's something you want to consider for most.
I can't read it.
So I can read it out loud.
No, it's okay. Let me just quickly read it. So Mayor Ramsey, you can have discussion to the motion that Justin just typed up there and see if someone wants to do it.
Okay, first and foremost, what are your thoughts on the first motion? Is there somebody who would like to make a motion on number 1? It's A, the ULCT approach. We're going to do 3 separate motions potentially here, looking at addressing how we feel about the ULCT approach that's in front of us with this SB 34 plus standards as an incentive added specifically. Is there anybody who wants to make a motion on that or massage that a little bit, or what do you think?
Mayor Walker, I'd like to make a motion that we support the ULCT concept as outlined, including the retail incentive comparison document, including potentially integrating the SB 34 plus standards as an incentive for a municipality to use with respect to retail incentives.
Thank you, Mayor Walker.
I'd second that.
All right, we've got a motion by Mayor Walker and a second by Mayor Shepherd. In discussion? Sorry, I can't see any of you. So you have to raise your hand if you want to give us discussion, and then you'll jump to the top.
I think it's the only possible motion. we
I
can
think it
make.
is too. I think that's how it has to be. So nobody's jumping out with discussion. I'm gonna call for a vote. All in favor of, I'm gonna call this motion A by Mayor Walker. All in favor of motion A, please unmute and say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay.
No.
Was that Mayor Randall? I couldn't see. Was it Mary? I'm sorry. I don't know who that was.
It was Mayor Randall. I just like going with the Vickers proposal.
Oh, so
We're gonna
we'll
vote on that
one
next.
too.
We're gonna vote on all three
Yeah.
proposals, how we feel about them. So you're a no on the ULCT concept?
I'll change my vote to yes, but
It doesn't mean that you're choosing that over Vickers. It means that the
Yeah,
concepts
parallel
in
paths.
it.
Independent vote.
Yeah,
Parallel
they're,
paths.
yeah, because they're gonna merge, or the goal is to merge. Okay, so you're a yes then. So is there anybody else who's a no? Okay, that passes. Thank you. Moving on to B. The UEOC proposal, Representative Schultz proposal, you can see that there. Thank you. This is easier with the laptop in front of me. All right, you can see it on the screen. Currently opposing the bill is drafted for these specific reasons. I'm not going to read it all out loud. Look over it, and if there's anybody who'd like to make a motion on this, or if you'd like to change the wording.
So Mayor Ramsey, Jeff Silvestrini, I will make a motion to adopt resolution B. However, I would propose that we amend paragraph 4 and say that the penalties outlined in the bill are too broad, comma, invite litigation from any person, comma, and may have unintended negative consequences.
Good.
I'm willing to second that.
That's good. Okay.
I think you could change that to the word will have, not may have.
Yeah.
I'd also second that amended.
And I'll support that amendment if we want to say that.
Okay. All right. We have a motion on the language that's up there right now on the screen for B by Mayor Silvestrini with this addition, number 4, and a second by Kate Bradshaw. Any discussion to this? Please click on raise your hand so you can jump up on my screen. Okay, seeing none. All in favor of B as it's been amended right there, adding number 4, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. We have B. All right, moving to C. The UEOC, I'm just taking over your laptop.
Yep, that's right.
Moving to C, the UEOC proposal, which is the concept, Vickers concept, right? Proposal 2 potentially from the UEOC, but it's Vickers concept that we hope to, I think, do quite a bit more work on. It sounds like maybe we're going to really strive to see how we can incorporate our draft concepts with Senator Vickers, what he's got, simplify, and see if we can't bring this together. It's up there.
Mayor Ramsey, Jeff Silvestrini, can I suggest that rather than we say we currently oppose it in the motion, that we something like we find the following problematic. However, we hope that the proposal can be merged with the ULCT proposal, or refined following the principles in the ULCT proposal.
What if, in the spirit of editing on the fly, what if it says something along the lines of, sorry, anonymous iguana is covering up what I was trying to read.
I'll stop typing.
Good to know. That answers so many questions.
We find, what if it says that we appreciate, because I want to make sure that we
acknowledge that
we had the appreciation to Vickers a little bit more before saying that we find, and I also say we don't want to use the word problematic. We believe that there could be additional modifications made along the things outlined below that might move us closer to a position of support.
Yeah, I think that's crucial. I don't think we want to come out and say we oppose it, or we
Totally think so.
or this is a whole negative thing. We
It's a nice way to
appreciate
say,
this
wait,
effort. This is
likely,
good.
yeah,
Strategically, we want to preserve this as a fallback.
for sure.
What about a motion to approve further discussion and negotiation with Senator Vickers?
Justin, I'm letting you edit on the fly now so that I'm not the anonymous fly.
Covering up the first time.
Anonymous iguana.
What about that motion? A motion to approve further negotiation and discussion with Senator Vickers pursuant to the ULCT proposal and his proposals.
I second that motion by Mayor Walker.
I would have kept the 3 bullets, and so that the first part of Mayor Walker's thing kept the 3 things we
And then
specifically
keep
wanted.
the specifics that we want to talk about.
Sorry, Justin.
No, you're fine.
Okay, we have a motion on.
And I
Actually
think.
had a
I think
motion and a
what-
second.
And I don't know who seconded. I
Is that Gary?
can't see you.
I think that was Gary.
Thanks.
So point of clarification, does the motion include including the bullet points or the numbered things below that? Because I
Yes.
do think,
Yes.
okay, I think it's important to give some direction to Mayor Ramsey and to Senator Vickers even about what our concerns are in saying we want to cooperate with him.
Yeah, put all the bullet points back. My motion would be to approve further discussion and negotiation with Senator Vickers pursuant to the bullet points here and the ULCT proposal.
So if you, Nick, I don't know if you, sorry, I'm looking at my doc. So there is the whole paragraph in preparation for the upcoming vote. We instruct Mayor Ramsey to continue working with staff to negotiate. Is that where we should add this language? Because I think it's saying pretty close to the same thing.
Well, the Vickers comes closer. He doesn't need that whole list, right?
Yeah, but you could keep this in the motion just as we're working with Mayor Ramsey on what she says and with staff is negotiating. So you're giving direction to two entities here.
And I think we want to be clear from the very beginning of whatever we present that we appreciate Senator Vickers. So that's why I like Mayor Walker's motion.
Question, Cam, the Vickers approach still has penalty language in it, doesn't it?
So this is the nuance.
Yeah,
Senator Vickers proposed changing the big box size and then left the room. So the penalty piece is in the draft that was sent to us, but I don't know if that's from him or if that was just the merging with the Schultz draft.
I
So
wanna
that's where I
leave-
think we still need to highlight the issue with the penalties.
I want to
hate
leave
Focus more on
penalties completely out of my motion. No penalty language in the discussion.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, Cam, though, just to make clear, I don't think Senator Vickers was suggesting penalty language. I don't think that's an absolute thing that he was negotiating or talking about, or even, I don't believe that came from him.
Yeah,
So
I have not heard him say that, and it was not what he presented.
And we ought to take it out of any handouts we have.
Well, okay, but the language that right now is considered the Vickers concept has it in there.
That's my point.
It came from Schultz and from Ben Hart in the governor's office. So as long as it's still on that paper, we need to highlight it. But as soon as Senator Vickers says, no, I don't want that, then I think we're there.
I agree with you. That's my point. We've got a written document somewhere that implies that was there. And I
Right.
think we got to say something about it since we said it's unacceptable in Schultz's.
Yep.
All right, so C is long. C's got a long list. Take a look at it, Mayor Walker, and see if C is in line with your motion. Does this cover what you intended with your motion? Which really is the first sentence, right? The rest
The
of it is-
iguana keeps moving it.
Not me now.
Okay, I like that. You want me to restate it?
Please.
I move that we approve. I move that we let Senator Vickers know we appreciate the simplification approach and recognize in his recognition that one size fits all doesn't necessarily work. And we would like to continue further discussions with Senator Vickers with respect to the proposals outlined below 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we would like to merge Senator Vickers' proposal perhaps with elements of the ULCT proposal.
And I will still second.
I think that's key when you're in your discussion that you raise, like, you're really close, Senator. If we could only get you to merge this.
Yeah, if we can bring this into it, yeah.
Look, I'm used to not making motions. I'm used to taking them, so you got to bear with me.
Yeah. Okay, we have a motion and we have a confirmed second still on this. Any discussion? Anybody think there's any language that you still want to change? The concepts on here that you still want to change?
Can I add one point?
Yes.
And this, we didn't really talk about this earlier, but I just want to make sure people are clear. Item number 2 up there is the issue of all public funds versus just sales and property taxes. Our proposal is just sales and property tax versus any sort of public funds. And so we didn't really talk about that as one of the major issues today, but it has come up in previous board meetings, so we'll continue to push
Yeah,
that.
we do need to find that. Yeah.
I will add that to the motion.
Nope, it's there. I was just
It's in there.
emphasizing it.
Yeah, it's in there.
You want to hold it?
No.
Maybe anonymous would want to come.
Okay, any additional changes on this? If not, we'll call for a vote. All right, all in favor of supporting the motion of C, this proposal, let the Senator Vickers know that we appreciate the simplification approach and recognize, that one size doesn't fit all of us. And we want to continue our conversation with him with these 4 bullet points, working to merge maybe what he has with what the ULCT concept based on our discussion and what's listed here. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay,
Perfect.
thank you.
Okay, so Mayor Ramsey, we are
So
well
yeah,
over
let's get,
time.
yeah.
So we
My
really,
instructions are,
your instructions were part of the motion. So
yeah, just
we'll,
all that. We're gonna refine that. We'll get through it. It'll be fine. I can
Yeah.
speak to this.
perfect. Well, and thank you for your willingness to serve on the UEOC. This has not been an easy assignment.
Might not be
So thank
fun to speak to it, but it'll be right. It's the right thing to do. It'll be good. Good. Yeah, be okay.
you. Nick, quickly pull up the CHOP presentation. If we need to take one more vote there. Again, we don't have a bill, but what we as staff have done is we've gone through the PowerPoint that we sent you.
Sorry, is that the last one on the original
Yes.
documents?
Well, it's what Carson,
It's the
okay, so so Nick, we'll just pull up the missing middle piece real quick. So let's start there, go share the missing middle piece, and then we'll pull up the screen that Carson had with the motion for the CHOP. So go back down to the same page we were on, I think it's page 9 or page 11. Now we'll distribute this in Friday Facts in one of the upcoming weeks. But again, this is really the first time, so start there, leave it there, just blow it up. This is the first time that we actually can look at what is termed missing middle housing. You heard Mayor Fulmer bring it up in the 4 urban counties. This does not have an affordability piece locked into it because density does not always equate to affordability. You could have an expensive, luxury apartment that's not missing middle, and a moderately priced single family home that is. But this starts to go down the path of better data around what is happening in the housing space in the urban areas on missing middle. And then this does break it down by city, which was one of our requests of the researchers. So Nick, can you scan down just a couple pages to the Utah County one? Again, it's there for all 4 counties. If you go on, yeah, so again, Utah County, you can see Vineyard and Provo have the largest stock of what the Utah Foundation is classified as missing
Scroll
middle.
down so they can see the key.
Oh, yeah. So the key here is you have different colors for townhomes, mobile parks, and multifamily complexes of different sizes. And we don't have the raw data yet from them, just this table. You can see that on one end of the spectrum, you have communities like Elk Ridge and Alpine, and on the other end, you have Vineyard and Provo. So
Can you
we're
put
not.
that on screen share?
Oh, is it not on screen share?
My apologies.
Okay. Thanks for speaking up. So here's the key again. It's just the 4 urban counties along the Wasatch Front thus far, but this is part of what we would like to accomplish with SB 34 Plus is to get better, consistent data from across the state. So this is just by Utah County. You can see a majority actually of the housing stock in Vineyard as of the date of their research is missing middle. Now, Claire Shepard, you referenced how Clearfield has entitled thousands of units. I don't know if those are considered here. That's part of our follow-up questions for the Utah Foundation is that type of data is also important to know, not just what's built, but what is planned to be built or what is entitled. This data will be helpful as we continue. We're not looking to discuss it today. We will distribute it to the board and in Friday Facts. And this report does include this type of data for all 4 urban counties. can you pull up the PowerPoint now? Start, bring that up so we can take a quick motion on the CHA.
So there should be a second attachment.
As Carson pulls this up, well, that'll work too, if the other attachments, yeah, there you go. That'll- So this is the PowerPoint that we sent as part of the. This is the presentation we sent as part of the board packet. We've gone through point by point and what we expect. So just start clicking through it. So right now we have listed as opposed potential changes to internal ADUs. That being said, we think politically, the issue of impact fees for internal ADUs is one that has considerable legislative support. So
Don't see why.
there you go. So right now we've listed a recommendation of opposed, but this is one where it may be in our political best interest to swallow a position of neutrality, if not today, then at some point politically. As we've talked to attorneys around the state, we've gotten mixed messages from cities. Some cities think there's justification for impact fees for internal ADUs. Others, and actually the majority of others at this point don't. There's a bit, no, go back. There's a business license piece that was a line in the sand for us last year that we would say an internal ADU still must have a business license. There's an issue about grandfathering that concerns us, so our recommendation there is to oppose. Keep going, Nick. On the rural pieces, we're either neutral or supporting the funding request. Keep going. On the TOD piece, we've listed just TBD. We're meeting with UTA. They have concerns about how this is drafted. They're working on an alternative, so it's not ready for prime time yet. Next. Mayor Walker, we listed a staff recommendation of support, but wanted to make sure that was consistent with where Draper City was at of the inclusionary housing component within Point of the Mountain. Is that something you're comfortable with?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it.
Okay, perfect. Next. Then this is the SB 34 plus concept that we sent, and we're just waiting to see if the language reflects what came from our planners. And so most of it is either support or TBD until we see the language. Nick, continue. Then this gets to, or this is still, yes, support, because this is all the requests to improve the report and data collection that came from our own members. And then the last one, Nick, is, this is Isaac's point, if you go above and beyond the bare minimum, that you would qualify for additional state dollars. The example we keep using is a local match part 2, that if you go above and beyond and have more menu items, that then you would qualify or get prioritized for local match part 2 from the ARPA dollars or other state programs. So again, waiting for the language, but that was the message loud and clear. We heard from caucuses in September and have presented to LPC twice on it and have not had much pushback specifically on this piece. So Nick, go to the next slide. So again, this is just, you can see which ones we've recommended oppose, support, or TBD. The one we're anxious about is the ADU one on the internal ADUs and their impact fees, whether we should be opposed or if we should work toward neutral on that one, because we think politically there's a lot of momentum for that to happen anyway. So Mayor Ramsey, we'd welcome a motion recognizing that a lot of this could change once we see language, but this at least gives us something to go back to our 2 commissioners for Friday's meeting and give them something to say and give me something to say when I'm testifying.
Motion to approve these staff recommendations.
And then with internal ADUs and impact fees, oppose, or?
I would say oppose.
I figured you would, but.
You know how much I love ADUs and the representative that ran that.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second? To approve the staff recommendations and to oppose.
Impact fees and ADUs.
Yeah. Is there a second?
So Mayor Ramsey, just Jeff Silverstein, I will second it, but I do have a reservation with respect to the impact fee concept regarding ADUs. I'm more okay with waiving impact fees on ADUs because I'm not sure that there's that impact is really that significant in terms of other infrastructure. But I do think that we need to stand firmer on the other two ADU proposals. You know, using a business license is one way to regulate ADUs to ensure that they comply with the things the legislature has acknowledged that are legitimate concerns of municipalities, like requiring additional off-street parking and things like that. And if we lose the ability to license, then a subsequent owner of a property, there's no way to keep track of what's going on with them. There's no way to remind them what their obligations are. And there's no enforcement mechanism really for us to get after that if they're in violation. So that's my view on that, but I will second Kate's motion otherwise.
And I would, and in supplementing my reasons for making the motion, why I made it, I feel strongly that we negotiated hard for those concessions in the fifth substitute of HB 82. And so it's important to fight to keep them. Potentially they become negotiating components later on. And said from a city that does not even charge an impact fee for ADUs. The business license is absolutely critical, especially for the short-term rental component. That was another key and hard won concession.
Good. Okay, good. Thank you.
You have a hand for
I do have Councilwoman Malkovich.
Yes, I have a question with regards to ADUs that came up at our last council meeting, and it's with regards to water. And if, because we have allocated water, of course, from the state engineer for how much water our city can use, and yet there is an impact if you have an ADU with a potentially second family living in the same residence. And so we were just wondering about that component, if anyone else is requiring additional water shares to be brought in. If a development comes in, they have to bring a water share. Would this be something that would be a consideration? We weren't sure if it's been done before. I brought it up to Justin. I hadn't heard back from him yet, but some of our council people are wanting to request a certain amount of water shares per ADU.
So, Mayor, I can address that. So this is one of the issues that has come up around whether or not a city should be able to charge an impact fee for an internal ADU. Because it's internal to the house, when you calculate the potential density and you calculate the impact fees, it's really hard to distinguish between when Mayor Ramsey had 6 kids at home versus the 2 kids at home that you now have, versus a family that may move into the basement versus your married child who moves into the basement while they're building a house. So the distinction between the internal ADU and the simple life cycle of a family that may be living in that house where grandma and grandpa move in, trying to distinguish those two things is really difficult. And that's where, as we've talked to legislators, I mean, I can tell you that Representative Waldrop, who's been very, very fair within the Housing Affordability Commission and has been very, very responsive to lead concerns. You know, he's heard the debate in the Land Use Task Force about impact fees for internal ADUs, and he's convinced that they are an impediment to a homeowner using their house for an ADU, and that the cost to the city is minimal. And knowing that the amount of influence he has in this space right now and how responsive he is to a whole slew of other league issues in this space, that's our hesitancy to oppose that piece rather than to work toward neutrality on it. But we also think there's a difference between an internal ADU and an external ADU, where you have a completely separate unit in the backyard with a separate utility meter and everything else.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion on the table and we have a second to support this.
Clarification, so does the motion include that we keep business licenses or not?
Yes. Yeah, so we are opposed to removal of business licenses.
Yep. And I did see the chat popped up on this big screen for just a quick second. Mayor Dayton, I saw that you were supportive of that as well. I did see that. And if there was anything else I didn't see, but yes, thank you. Okay. All right. Any discussion to the motion on the table?
So the motion is
anything
still,
else?
just so I know, as the one who's got to negotiate this, we would still oppose the impact fees for ADUs, or is there a willingness to look at that one in light of everything else, all the other moving pieces within the bill? I just need to know as we're going to these.
Motions to oppose.
Yeah, I think the motion tells you to oppose it, Cam, but at least, my comments were, I seconded the motion as it was made, so we're still opposing it. I'm just saying that in terms of, if it comes up, that the impact fee is something I think we could give on if we had to.
I think there are degrees I would hold it, for like week 5. Not week 1.
Right, but the bill will be up on Friday. That's right. Okay. I mean,
I know, but the
yep.
governor can't sign it on Friday.
Yep.
Yeah. But you'll know in the back of your mind that that is a piece that we might be willing to discuss.
And that works for now.
Okay, okay. Okay, that said, I'm gonna ask, I'm gonna call for a vote. All in favor of supporting this motion, which is before you, and I'm not gonna restate the whole thing. If you have a question, let us know. Otherwise, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else you need from us?
Well, first, I apologize it went long, but thank you for a tremendous discussion. I certainly feel far more prepared now than I did 2 hours ago as we move forward for the commissions and for the legislature. We're excited to see local officials day in a couple of weeks and appreciate your service to your communities and to the league. It was really inspiring the last few days to go to oaths of office ceremonies. Mayor Shepherd, sorry, I missed yours this time. I was there. I was there 4 years ago.
Yes, you were.
And tried to make it to as many as possible. And so thank you to all of you for your willingness to serve. We have some really big issues this session. We just left the Great Salt Lake Summit where huge discussions on water conservation and the role of cities there. So at the meeting in 2 weeks, we're going to pull all the priorities together for you to give you a sense of everything that's coming. And then we will rely heavily on the league officers during the meeting. I'm thrilled to announce that a former league member is now a member of the legislature. Karen Peterson, former Clinton City Council member, is now in the legislature replacing Paul Ray. And almost as thrilling is that her replacement as the governor's chief lobbyist is a former league employee, Gil Abercrombie. So I'm really excited that we'll continue to have really good access with the governor's office so that Mayor Ramsey can beat him up like she did last year as we go into a really important session. So thank you to everybody, and we'll see you, Mayor Ramsey, in 2 weeks for local
Yes.
officials day. We'll have the
January
board
19th.
meeting right after local officials day.
Yep, January 19th. Thank you all so much. Thank you for sticking with us too. I know we all have to go. I'm supposed to be in South Jordan in 18 minutes, but
Yeah, me too.
thank you
Yep.
all. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, motion adjourned.
Motion to adjourn.
If all in favor of adjourning this meeting, please say aye.
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 Aye.